It is so nice to see all of you after so many years. I was very happy to meet so many familiar faces, some of whom I've not met for many, many years. And I know that I've met many of you virtually. I may not recognize you without the video screen, so please come by and say hello. And for many of you whom I've not yet had the opportunity to meet yet, my name is Kuann again, or you can call me YK, and I lead engagement activities for Asia Pacific. So welcome again to the PCI Asia Pacific Community Meeting 2023. And thank you for being here, because as Lance mentioned, this is the largest ever PCI conference that we have had in this part of the world. And for those of you who are watching on the live stream, I wish you were here. Do make sure you install the mobile app. It does give you a chance to communicate with some of the stakeholders here, and hopefully I see you next year. Now, I know for many of you, you have traveled great distances. The longest I've heard was 29 hours, right, with transit and so on. So thank you for being here, and for those of you who had to brave KL traffic, well done for being here as well. For me, I almost didn't make the trip. And this was because towards the back end of the PCI Europe community meeting, I was almost involved in a head-on accident. Okay, so I almost didn't make it. Someone else would have to come and be the MC. And as my life flashed before me, right, and so what happened was, I was heading towards the airport to go home, and suddenly my dear Uber driver, whom of course now I know the name for the rest of my life, his name is Peter, he had to execute an emergency brake as we were passing through a very narrow bridge to cross one of the large canals in Dublin. And the reason why was because there was an oncoming car on the wrong side of the road. Okay? So again, why I love my job so much and how standards can help us, because if it's not for Peter, things do happen, right? And in this case, the clueless driver, maybe from the US, who was on the opposite side of the road, because in Dublin, just like in Malaysia, you drive on the left side of the road, and the driver, well, he obviously didn't pay enough attention as he was driving through. He missed all of the signs, okay? And he continued driving through this narrow road. So, as you consider the different controls in the PCI standards, well, make sure you have a Peter in your corner who is alert and is able to then execute an emergency brake to trigger all of the necessary activities after that. I'm so happy that all of you are here today, right? And because these meetings are so important. And not only because of the wealth of information that we can share with one another, but also the connections that we can make with one another. Right? So, as you get reconnected with your friends that you have met many years ago, do also try to reach out to stakeholders whom you have not yet met. Okay? And I will try to prompt some of you to get introduced, and please don't introduce yourself to your friend. Okay? Now, we do have free Wi-Fi here, so one of the suggestions that I have, and it's because Asia Pacific is such a unique market, not everybody speaks English, or English will not be their first language. So what I like to suggest is, do try to install Google Translate or Microsoft Translator and enable the conversation option. This will give you a chance to communicate with somebody whom you have not yet met before. So do give it a chance. It does work. Technology does work when you put it to work properly. Okay? So do make an effort to reach out and make new connections while you're here. All right? Now, to start us off, on our very first presentation, you've got to pay attention to this presenter, right? It is an amazing presenter, and he has one of the coolest hairstyles that I know. Okay? And that presenter is me. All right? So, without further delay, let's continue. Now, we heard from Lance that, payment system is evolving. We know for a fact that it is getting more complicated. There's so many more stakeholders that are coming in almost every day, right? So what I'd like to share with you is some unique challenges that affects our region. Many of you will be familiar with this, so I'm not telling you something new. But it is some of the comments, observations that people have shared with me as I make my adventures through Asia Pacific. And more importantly, it is how all of you can come and be part of this community to influence the standards that many of you have to comply with. Now, I hope you enjoyed the opening video, very inspiring on what it means to scale new heights. Now, Asia Pacific is such a diverse region. And I know, most of you will know, that Asia Pacific is the home region for the tallest peak in the world, Mount Everest, which is about 8,000 meters tall. And this reminds me of our keynote speaker tomorrow, Mr. Khoo Swee Chow, whom Lance has mentioned. And he has not only scaled Mount Everest way back in 1998, he was also the first person from Southeast Asia and only the fourth in the world to scale and achieve the Explorer's Grand Slam. Well, I'll be honest, I didn't know what this was, so I had to look it up. Now, the Explorer's Grand Slam, what it means is the people who have conquered this achievement would have covered and climbed the 7 summits. So, the tallest peak in each of the continent. And of course, it includes Mount Everest. It also includes making the trek all the way to the North Pole and the South Pole. So, well, talk about being an overachiever. But as I was going through Mr. Khoo's bio, what I thought was quite amazing was how literally he took Finding Nemo. Okay? And what I mean was, he spent over 220 hours. That's more than 9 days, huh? 220 hours trying to look for Nemo because he spent it underwater in order to beat the Guinness World Record for the longest scuba submergence record. Okay? So, if you meet Mr. Khoo, if he's around the conference, do ask him more about his achievements, and I'm sure he has plenty of interesting stories to share. Now, you know that Asia Pacific is the home region for the highest peak in the world, but most people will be surprised that Asia Pacific is so diverse, but we are also the home region for the deepest point on Earth. Now, off the coast of the Philippines, about 2,200 kilometers, or for those of you who are still on the imperial system or from the US, this is about 1,300 miles. The Mariana Trench, you just saw the video, at its deepest point, it goes all the way down 11,000 meters. Or again, it's about 35,000 feet. Now, for those of you who paid attention in your flight here, you will recognize 35,000 feet because this is where the pilot comes onto the PA system, to welcome you to the flight. This is where the seatbelt sign goes off, and that's where they start bringing the food out. Okay? It is also much greater in height as compared to Mount Everest. That's how diverse it is. And as diverse as Asia Pacific is geographically, it is even more diverse when you consider the cultures that we have, the languages that we speak, and even if you try to count the number of messaging apps that we use, it varies widely. Okay? And this is all across all of the 62 markets that we have across Asia Pacific. And of course, some organizations classify it slightly differently depending on whether you include some markets or not. But this is according to the World Population Review website. But one thing remains the same as I speak to so many stakeholders, and that is how important it is for trust and security of the payment ecosystem. Everybody says the same thing. Of course, this pillar is clearly shaken as we hear constantly about the scams that are happening across Asia Pacific and the continued reports of data breaches. And I saw this firsthand when my dear son Isaac, on how he reacted as a young person when when his data was leaked. I saw this firsthand and how he reacted. So for those of you whom I've known for a while, you will know that my son is a very active businessman. Since he was 8 years old, he has been trying to buy and sell stuff, including trying to sell rubber bands for 20 cents. I'm not sure who buys them, but he still manages to get his sales, so very good returns on investment because, well, the cost is literally trying to find rubber bands. So he gradually got himself into one of these marketplaces that's really popular in Singapore to buy and sell Pokemon cards. And I saw how alarmed he was when he realized that his transaction history, his email address, as well as, most importantly, the home address. Because at that time, he was transacting by getting the delivery done where he stayed. And I saw how he completely avoided the marketplace. He refused to post any more things, and he was only trading with his friends. And this happened for many years, and this will be the same for all of the people who were involved in scams. They are not going to go back to the payment ecosystem anytime soon. Okay? So, we need to recognize, and we all know this, we are all part of the same ecosystem. We are all interconnected. And when one entity does not take data security seriously, it doesn't only affect the organization. Of course, the customers will be impacted, but also all of the people who are learning about the data breaches in the news, in social media, their trust will be shaken. The numbers speak for themselves. I don't need to tell you, especially given the audience that you are, why this is an issue. Instead, what I'd like to share with you, since all of you are here, are some free observations, free tips on what I've collected from my adventures across Asia Pacific. I don't have any slides for this, so there's no photos to take, so you do have to pay attention. The first is you need to focus on PCI DSS requirement number 10. Now, you do have to adopt all of the 12 requirements. I'm not saying that they are no longer relevant, but what happens, you will see tomorrow's presentation is a presentation by Tracy Long, PCI's VP for programs, and she's going to share more insights from you, from what we collate from PCI. Okay? Now, what I mean is, while we train and we certify PFIs, and for those of you who are not familiar with the acronym, keep it that way. We do have PFIs in this conference, and this is the only place where it's safe for you to interact with them. You don't want to have a PFI having to visit your office, because a PFI or PCI forensic investigator is only activated in a data breach. So, you don't want to meet a PFI in your office, okay? Because that means your organization is in trouble. So, PCI SSC itself is not involved in a data breach. Yes, we do help to train and certify the PFIs, but we are actually not involved in the data breach investigations. I learned about the data breaches the same as most of you through the newspaper. Okay? Now, what we do require from the PFIs is to submit anonymized data to us through one of the appendix in the report that they need to submit. And through this information, and that's why I mentioned PCI DSS requirement number 10, and in case you have not memorized the standards, it is referring to logging and monitoring all access to system components and cardholder data. Okay? So based on that information that we have received, we know that this is one of the key areas that is lacking from the analysis that we receive from the different PFIs. Okay, so do look out for that presentation by Tracy tomorrow. Lots of very interesting information because we need to learn from those who have been impacted. Okay? The next observation is really a misconception. Some companies have told me, well, YK, I've outsourced everything, right? Nobody has told me to comply with PCI DSS, so well, it's not really relevant to me. Now, try to remember STP or STP as an acronym because it stands for storing, transmitting, and processing. So as long as you store, you process, or transmit payment account data, you do have to comply with PCI DSS. In the event that you have outsourced in a certain way and you are completely not touching payment account data, I suggest to just double check with your acquirer, or if you're an acquirer, double check with a payment network, because so far in the conversations that I've had, most organizations will still handle payment account data in some way or another. Okay? So just double check that. And remember, even if you outsource, let's say if I'm a merchant and I outsource to organization A, and organization A somehow outsources your sensitive data to organization B, I've had really strange responses that told me that is telling me that, well, I don't know that organization B exists. How can I be liable for it? And that's not true. It is still your customers' data. If there's a data breach and you are the more well-known organization, I've seen firsthand that the news will report that you are breached, and maybe they will just have one sentence to talk about organization A or organization B. Okay? So watch out for your service providers, because based on stats that I've seen, data breaches in relation to service providers are increasing. Okay? So just in case you are not responsible for third parties in your organization, do bring back some of these observations, okay, and share them with your team members. And we do have many cybersecurities here in the room with us, as well as in the vendor showcase. So do visit them to ask for some advice on these areas. I know that through greater collaboration and sharing of knowledge, it will only help us to better secure our organization. Because no matter how good your organization is, there is no way that you can know everything, right? I've heard from some of the PFIs that the attackers have developed very helpful, user-friendly user manuals that are available on the dark web in order how to execute exploits and vulnerabilities more easily. And many of them have developed tools. For all you know, they may be in the hotel across the street to share notes and to compare, to guide one another, right? So we need to come together as a community. We need to work together. Now, I've mentioned this before. PCI SSE drives payment security by making use of the standards that we help to manage. And we do so together with all of you, with our feedback that we get from the industry, and we work with many different stakeholders from the PCI community, right? So your feedback is really important to us. A standard that is irrelevant is useless. And we know that, and that's why we continue to take a very forward-looking view of the standards, where we interact with our community. And this is not only over the short term, where we consider some of the impact to the standards more tactically, but we also discuss longer-term changes that we need, longer-term impact, 3 to 5 years horizon on how the standards need to evolve strategically. There are lots and lots of opportunities to get involved and to collaborate with not only the PCI subject matter experts, many of them you're going to see them on stage as well as at the booth. It also includes our PCI Exco members, so all of the payment brands, as well as one another, right? So with the PCI community. And I'm so happy that more than 700 companies all around the world are involved in the PCI community. And this includes financial institutions, merchants, payment processors, solution providers, and many other companies who do have to adopt payment standards. And you would have seen the logos that Lance displayed just now, and I'll be covering a little bit about the Board of Advisors as well. Yeah? Now, I do need to point out that this does not include our experts from the security assessor community, as well as our PCI approved labs, because we have separate engagements just with them. Now, some of you may know that about a year ago, we have made changes to our participating organization program, where we have developed 3 levels. The first is really to be as inclusive as possible, where we can allow any individual who is interested in PCI resources to get access to them, right? This usually appeals to individual consultants, it appeals to academics, as well as anyone whose organization cannot become a PO for whatever reason, right? There are lots of information on the PCI website, so do look out for it under the menu of getting involved. The next, those of you who have been POs in the past, you will know that they are now transitioned to becoming an associate PO. And there are so many benefits just becoming an associate PO alone. I will cover a little bit about this, but again, the PCI SSC's website is a good resource of information. And lastly, again, based on feedback that we have received, is another level that we have created, a higher tier, and this is because industry stakeholders have told us that they want to be even more involved. They want to be active and provide feedback, again, not only strategically, but more tactically as the standards are developed. Now, if I talk about the benefits of becoming a PO, I can broadly categorize them into 3 groups, 3 categories. The first is around expanding knowledge. Yeah? And one of the benefits that a PO gets is complimentary tickets to events like this, because it does help you to expand the knowledge that you have. Associate POs, you get 2 complimentary tickets, and principal POs, you get 5. And of course, there are other benefits that's associated with this category, including free or discounted training, depending on which level you fall in. But also, it does give you discounts. Another category of this is about making use of the PCI being a global standard body and our reach all over the world to promote your brand. Okay, so this includes providing you with the necessary bus kits, the PR templates, and so on, for you to promote your brand to stakeholders around the world. And the last category is around influencing and collaborating with one another. And you can see some of the benefits on the screen. Now, many stakeholders want to participate in the request for comments because if I have to follow a security standard, and most people that I speak to have very strong opinions on some of the requirements, what better way to provide those feedback through our request for comments? Because remember, I mentioned that we take industry feedback very seriously, and we actively ask for feedback whenever we make significant changes to the standards. It does include some global initiatives, which includes the SIG, or Special Interest Group, as well as the different industries task force. Okay? And the SIG, I know that they're working on a topic that they have nominated. They went through a voting process, and they're now discussing on the details of the paper itself. And it's around scoping and segmentation of modern network architecture. Especially given the popularity of cloud-based solutions today, I'm looking forward to what they are going to deliver, and they are expected to share their findings the early part of next year. I've mentioned about the community meetings, but also a quick word about the Board of Advisors. Because there are so many stakeholders in the PCI community, becoming a PO allows you to stand for election by joining the Board of Advisors. And you can see from the logo that Lance mentioned just now that this also gives you an opportunity to interact with many different stakeholders from all across the world, where the Board of Advisors will actively provide their feedback on standards, and they also have the power to vote for the security standards before it is published. Okay? With that, thank you so much again for your attention. I hope you learned something new from the presentation. The QR code is worth scanning because it gives you more information about becoming a PO, and you do have my email address there in case you have additional questions.